You can feel the weight of days that never change, the same prayers, the same questions, the same silence that keeps repeating. It's as if time has stopped, as if heaven has forgotten your name. You look around and nothing moves, nothing answers, nothing happens. And in that emptiness, a quiet question echoes deep within. Is God still doing anything at all? There are moments when silence becomes the loudest sound, moments when the soul grows tired of waiting, and faith seems to dissolve into the slow passing of hours. You try to keep going, but your heart feels trapped in a season that never ends. And that's when the mind cries out, begging for signs, any sign, just to know heaven is still paying attention. But what you may not see is that this apparent stillness is, in truth, a different kind of movement. A movement that doesn't happen outside, but within. Because while you feel motionless, God is rearranging everything: time, people, places, and most of all, you. God is never inactive. He simply moves in silence when he wants to shape something that noise would never allow to be born. He works in the pauses, in the in-betweens, in the hours when you think nothing is happening. It's in the invisible that he builds what is essential. Sometimes God hides you not to punish you, but to protect you. He places you in silence so that his voice becomes the only one left. He separates you from the noise of quick answers, comparisons, and human expectations. And there, in the quiet, he teaches you how to listen again. Because silence is not the absence of sound, it's presence in its purest form. So perhaps what seems like delay is only the care of a father who prefers to form before he delivers. Perhaps what looks like an ending is the beginning of a new kind of faith, the kind that doesn't depend on results, but on presence. You have not been forgotten. Heaven is not standing still, it's simply moving at the rhythm of eternity, a rhythm not measured by seconds, but by transformation. And that's why today, before you try to understand time, God wants to teach you how to rest in him. Because only those who learn to quiet the heart discover that the silence of God is not absence, it is his work. There are days when silence seems to fill everything. No word comes from heaven, no change appears on earth. The heart grows used to the sound of nothing and begins to doubt. It's in that emptiness that faith is tested in its purest form. When the heavens seem quiet, what's really being tested is not God's voice. It's our ability to keep listening, even when he speaks softly. The restless soul tries to interpret silence as absence. The mind searches for explanations, reconsiders choices, looks for faults, and nothing seems to make sense. Silence becomes almost like a mirror. In it, a person faces their own vulnerability and realizes how much they depend on answers just to keep going. Yet it's precisely there that God begins to act, because his silence is never neglect, it's an invitation. A call to trust without seeing, to believe without signs, to remain without certainty. It was in this same place of apparent stillness that so many men and women of faith were shaped. Abraham waited years for a promise that seemed forgotten. Joseph endured prisons and betrayals before he saw purpose. Mary, after the angel's visit, had to live months in silence until hope took form. Each of them lived through days when heaven seemed immovable. But God was never idle. He was always moving behind the scenes. And that's why he whispers to us, as in Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." This is not just a call to patience, it's an invitation to deep trust. When everything seems motionless, God is asking the heart to rest long enough to notice the movement that can't be seen. Silence, then, is not empty. It's the studio where God composes his next song. It's in life's pauses that he realigns stories, repositions people, and teaches the soul to breathe again. Those who endure the interval discover that waiting time is shaping time. What feels like pause is process. What feels like distance is care. And perhaps the reason there's still no answer is simple. What God is doing is too great to fit into words. Silence is the language of the unseen, the space where he shapes, heals, and reorganizes what still needs to mature. It's in that soundless place that we learn to tell apart human noise from divine whisper. Faith matures when it stops depending on sound and starts trusting the character of the one who promised. God is the same when he speaks and when he's silent. He doesn't change with the volume of his voice. He changes the heart of the one who learns to listen. So when everything seems still, remember, heaven has not forgotten you. It's simply teaching you how to rest. And it's in that rest that movement begins. The kind of movement you don't see but can feel. The kind that doesn't happen outside, but within. Silence may look like stillness, but it's the secret ground where God prepares everything that will one day come to light. There is a subtle but profound difference between the time we wait for and the time when God actually moves. We count days, he counts transformations. We grow frustrated with passing minutes, he works with ripening seasons. Sometimes what looks like delay is simply synchronization with the eternal. A dance between what we ask for and what we're not yet ready to receive. Nature understands this rhythm better than we do. No seed blooms the same day it's planted. The sun rises right on time, even when the night feels too long. And likewise, God is never late. His not yet is never a no. It's a wait, I'm preparing something greater. There is a kind of love that protects us even from blessings given too soon. As written in Ecclesiastes 3:1, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. This truth echoes through the corridors of the heart, reminding us that purpose cannot be rushed. It must mature. And as it matures us. God does not measure time by duration, but by the depth of faith. He would rather shape us slowly than bless us superficially. Moses waited 40 years before leading a people to freedom. David was anointed long before he became king. Jesus lived 30 years in silence before 3 years of mission. Each walked through seasons when it seemed God was still, yet in every moment he was preparing the stage. The timing of God is like the wind. You can't see where it comes from or where it goes, but it changes everything it touches. And maybe that's the point. God doesn't just want to give you something. He wants to make you someone capable of carrying it. That's why his clock doesn't match ours. He delays what we ask for to advance what we need. He silences the moment to secure eternity. And through it all, he teaches the soul to rest in the cadence of the unseen. So when life feels too slow, remember, heaven hasn't lost its rhythm. It's simply inviting you to walk in tune with it. Because the time of God isn't made of seconds, but of meaning. Believing when everything is going right is simple, but when heaven grows silent and nothing changes, faith stops being theory and becomes a choice. It's easy to trust when answers come, but it's in the silence that trust reveals its essence. God doesn't measure faith by emotional intensity, but by endurance. And sometimes enduring is the most spiritual act a person can perform. When answers delay, the mind begins to shout, "Is God still listening?" And it's in that cry that the opportunity for a purer faith is born. The kind that doesn't depend on guarantees, only on a name. The heart that chooses to believe in the midst of doubt learns what true worship is, continuing to trust even when the path makes no sense. Faith isn't a feeling that visits, it's a muscle that grows stronger in the absence of signs. Just as the body builds strength through resistance, the spirit matures through waiting. It's in the pauses that God trains the heart not to collapse before the unseen. As written in Hebrews 11:1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That is the nature of faith, to see the invisible, to hear the silence, and to walk even without a map. Peter walked on water because he looked at Jesus, not the wind. But when he turned his eyes toward what was visible, he began to sink. The same happens to us. When we focus on what isn't happening, we forget the God who still is. Faith doesn't ignore the storm. It simply chooses to keep its eyes on the one who commands it. God doesn't test faith to see if we believe. He proves it to strengthen it. It's in the absence of signs that faith ceases to be fragile and becomes rooted. It grows downward before it ever blooms outward. And when the right time comes, what once looked like mere survival reveals itself as formation. Silence doesn't destroy faith, it purifies it. It removes selfish motives, fear and haste, until only love remains. And love is the soil where faith stands firm. So even if nothing changes, something happens within. The heart becomes steadier, more patient, more like the heart of Christ. And maybe that's the true purpose of waiting, not just to witness a miracle, but to become part of one. Because every true faith, before it moves mountains, learns how to stand when everything else falls apart. Waiting has its own sound, the sound of the soul being shaped. It's there, between what we ask for and what hasn't yet happened, that the heart learns what trust really means. Many see delay as punishment, but heaven sees it as formation. God never wastes ordinary days. He plants in them silent lessons that only bloom with time. The desert was never a mistake. It was there that Moses learned to hear God's voice and where his people learned to depend on daily manna. The desert is the classroom of faith, and no one graduates without walking through it. At first, everything looks barren, but slowly you realize that roots are growing. Waiting is where patience becomes strength and faith turns into wisdom. Paul wrote in Romans 5:3-4, "We also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope." These words reveal the divine cycle of maturity. Suffering isn't the end, but the beginning of something being built. Every delay, every seeming detour, every silence, it's all part of a process that shapes in us what no shortcut ever could. God forges character when no one is watching. He teaches us to walk by faith without applause, to obey without recognition, to serve without return. Obedience in obscurity is the seed that will one day bloom into testimony. While the world values results, heaven values roots. Waiting also reveals motives. It shows whether we seek the blessing or the blesser. As time stretches on, intentions surface, and God, in love, realigns the heart. He doesn't want to simply deliver promises. He wants to shape people who can carry them. The promise may delay, but the purpose never does. And when the time finally comes, what matters most is not what we receive, but who we became during the waiting. The mature heart understands that God didn't want to just change the circumstance. He wanted to change us within it. Maybe that's the true miracle of delay, to make us more like Christ through the very things we prayed would pass us by. And it's in that silent ground that character grows, bit by bit, with every dawn. If this reflection is meeting you where you are welcome to stay with us. Subscribe and let these quiet words find you again. There is a kind of silence that isn't a pause. It's preparation. When it seems like nothing is happening, God is moving threads the eyes can't see. He works behind the curtain of existence, synchronizing stories, drawing people closer, and opening paths that don't yet exist. What looks like stillness is actually an invisible alignment between now and purpose. God doesn't organize only circumstances. He organizes time itself. He adjusts hearts, repositions opportunities, and creates connections that will only make sense later. It's as if heaven were writing several stories at once, and yours is one of them, woven carefully into the greater fabric of eternity. That's why even when everything seems motionless, there's movement happening beneath the surface. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. It's a reminder that the divine plan is never improvised. It's perfect even when invisible. Think of Joseph, forgotten in prison. To human eyes, nothing was moving. But God was aligning Pharaoh's heart, shaping dreams, and even preparing the famine to come, so that at the exact time, Joseph would stand in the right place. The silence wasn't neglect, it was divine strategy. And so it is with us. While we wait, God prepares the stage for fulfillment. The same happens to each of us. There are conversations that still need to happen, people who still need to mature, doors that must close before new ones open. The time that feels wasted is, in truth, the time when everything is fitting together. It's the interval in which God works where we can't see, so that when we finally do, everything is already complete. And even if you don't notice, every detail is being carefully positioned. The unseen is busier than ever, and when the moment arrives, what looked like delay will reveal itself as precision. God is never late. He simply aligns all things so that the blessing comes when the heart is ready to hold it. So if nothing seems to be moving today, remember, there is movement happening within and around you, and that movement has an author who never fails to synchronize the perfect time for every purpose. Waiting is not the same as standing still. Faith that only dreams but never acts weakens with time. God doesn't call us to passivity, but to quiet perseverance, to a faithfulness that continues even without visible signs. Daily obedience, the kind no one sees, is the invisible link between promise and fulfillment. It's there, in the small choices, that miracles begin to take shape. While we ask for great transformations, God invites us to simple steps, to forgive, to give thanks, to serve, to stay. True faith is revealed in the constancy of what we do when it seems to make no difference. It's easy to obey when the reward is visible, but it's in the anonymity of the ordinary that character is truly forged. Miracles aren't born on the stage, they're born in the backstage of faithfulness. Paul wrote in Galatians 6:9, "And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart." This promise reveals a deep spiritual truth. What is done with constancy is never forgotten. Every act of obedience, every silent prayer, every unseen kindness, each is recorded in God's time, and nothing is lost. Noah built the ark for years without a single drop of rain. Abraham climbed the mountain with wood, not knowing the end of the story. Peter cast his nets again after a night of failure. Their obedience didn't depend on understanding, but on trust. And it was that silent trust that opened the way for the miracle. To obey is not to understand. It's to rest in the one who does. It's to keep serving when weariness presses in, to keep believing when feelings don't follow. It's to act as if it were already possible, even when the visible says otherwise. Obedience is faith with footsteps. And perhaps that's why God values the even so. Even when it hurts, even when it delays, even when it seems useless, continuing is the purest form of worship. Heaven moves when someone remains faithful in the unseen. Daily obedience doesn't just attract results, it attracts presence. And it's that presence that sustains everything, because in the end, the greatest miracle isn't what happens around us. It's what God does inside those who choose to remain firm. Pain is one of those realities no heart desires, yet every soul knows. It arrives without warning, alters plans, and changes the direction of our prayers. At times, it feels impossible to reconcile the love of God with the suffering we endure. But heaven sees from a different angle. Pain is not a mistake in the plan, it's an instrument in the Creator's hands. Suffering, no matter how intense, is never wasted. God uses every tear as a brushstroke that adds color to a greater purpose. What today feels like confusion will one day reveal itself as part of a complete picture. There are pains that will only make sense when the whole painting is unveiled. And until then, he invites us to trust the artwork still in progress. As Paul wrote in Romans 8:28, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose." This is not a promise that everything will be easy, but that nothing will be in vain. The love of God is powerful enough to turn what once wounded us into something that strengthens us. Joseph was betrayed, sold, and forgotten, but every pain brought him closer to his purpose. David wept in caves before sitting on the throne. And Jesus, before resurrection, endured the weight of the cross. Pain has never had the final word over the children of God. It only prepares the stage where grace will be revealed. When the heart is wounded, it's natural to want to understand. But sometimes God doesn't explain, he transforms. He doesn't respond with logic, he responds with presence. His comfort isn't an answer that removes the pain, but a hand that sustains us through it. Pain breaks what is false and strengthens what is eternal. It reminds us that we don't control tomorrow and teaches us to depend on the one who holds it. Every tear that falls before God becomes a seed of comfort, and every wound touched by grace becomes a fountain of compassion. So don't run from what hurts. Let God use even this to shape something new. Because suffering may change the scenery, but it never changes the love of the one guiding it. And one day, when the full picture is revealed, you'll see that pain was only a temporary color in the perfect design of an eternal purpose. There is an entire world happening beyond what the eyes can see. While the visible seems still, the invisible moves with divine precision. God operates in dimensions that cannot be explained, only perceived, and it's within this silent territory that the greatest transformations take place. What we call waiting, heaven calls building. The invisible is more alive than we imagine, and it's there that God writes what we will one day see. Promises are not born on the stage of time, but in the womb of eternity. Everything that appears in the physical world begins first in the heart of God. That's why silence is never empty. It's a spiritual womb where the impossible begins to take form. Paul reminds us in 2 Corinthians 4:18, "We do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal." This verse holds the key to mature faith, learning to trust what cannot be seen. The unseen is the workshop where God works while teaching us to see with the eyes of the soul. Think of Elijah, who prayed for rain without a single cloud in sight. Yet he bowed down and prayed again and again until a small sign appeared on the horizon. His faith was sustained not by what he saw, but by what he knew about the character of God. The invisible was not absence, it was assurance. And so it is with us. Sometimes nothing seems to move, but the heart begins to change. A thought grows calmer, a hope is reborn, a forgiveness becomes possible. These quiet inner shifts are the first signs of a coming miracle. God always starts within before he manifests without. When everything feels silent, remember, the invisible is God's field of work. Every prayer, every tear, every act of faith becomes a seed in that ground. No spiritual gesture is ever wasted. What he is doing now may be hidden, but soon it will bloom on the surface of your life. So don't rush to see, just keep believing, because the unseen is not still. It beats with the life of God himself, and one day, what was invisible will become undeniable. What part of this is speaking to you right now? Share a single word in the comments. It may encourage someone else. Worshipping in the middle of waiting is one of the purest forms of faith, because praising when everything is well is natural, but praising when heaven feels closed is an act of deep surrender. Worship in silence is a spiritual declaration. Even without understanding, I trust. Even without seeing, I still believe. It's the kind of faith that doesn't depend on circumstances, only on the certainty that God is still worthy. Worship is not just a song, it's a posture of the heart. It's when, amid questions, we choose to keep our eyes fixed on the one who never changes. When tears fall, yet the soul still whispers, "You are good." That is the kind of worship heaven recognizes, not the one born from emotion, but the one born from trust. God doesn't need our music, He desires our heart. That's what David understood when he wrote in Psalm 34:1, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." David didn't say, "in good times." He said, "at all times." Even in caves, between fear and uncertainty, worship was the shelter of his faith. Praise didn't change his circumstances immediately, but it changed the atmosphere of his soul. When we worship through pain, something invisible happens. Despair loses strength, and the presence of God becomes tangible. Worship is a key that unlocks inner doors. It quiets thoughts, silences fear, and restores eternal perspective. To praise in the waiting is to remind the heart that God's love remains constant, even when life feels unstable. Paul and Silas understood this inside a prison. They prayed and sang hymns to God, and the chains were broken. The miracle didn't happen before the worship, it happened during it. This reveals something profound. Worship isn't the reward, it's the path. It's the environment where God's power moves most freely. Worship during waiting also changes how we see time. What once felt like delay becomes communion. What was discouragement turns into dependence. When the heart chooses to worship in the in-between, it finds rest. Because those who learn to worship in scarcity will never lose their gratitude when abundance arrives. God moves where there is surrender. He dwells among praises, and that's why the enemy always tries to silence worship first. The enemy knows that a heart that worships without answers is an invincible heart. Because those who worship in the dark have already won before the light appears. So if words fail, worship with your silence. If strength fades, worship with the breath that remains. If tears are all you have, offer them as a song. True worship doesn't need a stage, only sincerity. And maybe right now, as your heart insists on praising, heaven is beginning to move. Because worship in the waiting doesn't just change circumstances, it changes the worshipper. There comes a point in the journey of faith when silence stops being absence and becomes revelation. It's when the soul realizes that the true miracle doesn't happen outside, but within. When nothing seems to move around you, God is moving within your heart, rebuilding what time wore down, healing what waiting exposed, rekindling the hope that seemed to fade. The Holy Spirit becomes the unseen wind that changes everything's direction. The heart is the first altar where heaven begins to act. Before changing circumstances, God changes perception. Before opening doors, He adjusts posture. While the mind asks for speed, the Spirit works quietly, removing fear, pride, control, and impatience. He clears the inner space so His presence can dwell freely. This is the part of the story no one sees, but it's where everything truly begins. As Paul declared in Philippians 1:6, being confident of this very thing, that He who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. This promise is a reminder that God never leaves His work unfinished. The process may feel slow, but every second of waiting is a tool in the hands of the one who knows exactly what He's doing. Many times we ask God to move mountains, but He chooses to move the heart first. We ask Him to take us to new places, and He teaches us to be whole right where we are. We ask time to move faster, and He invites us to stay. Because before He gives results, He wants to grow roots, and roots don't grow through hurry, but through trust. The deepest transformations don't happen in noise, but in stillness. Just as a seed germinates underground, far from sight, faith also matures in the dark. Roots grow in silence, and it's in them that the tree finds strength to face future winds. Likewise, what God does in secret will sustain everything that later comes to light, and when the heart finally aligns with God's rhythm, something shifts. Fear loses control, anxiety loses ground, and rest becomes the language of the soul. You realize that God's movement is never loud, it's patient. He moves in tensions before circumstances. And when the inside is healed, the outside slowly begins to reflect that new order. God's movement is like the dawn. During the night, nothing seems to change, but the sky is being painted little by little, until suddenly the light breaks through, and you realize the process never stopped. It was simply unfolding in another rhythm. The same happens in the soul. The light returns gradually until the heart fully awakens to the presence that was always there. So don't mistake silence for inactivity. Don't assume God has stopped just because the scene hasn't changed. He's moving the unseen, aligning the spirit, strengthening what is eternal. The true miracle begins within the one who waits, because it's inside that the kingdom is first established. And when that inner movement is complete, the heart learns something no hurry could ever teach. Peace doesn't come after the miracle. Peace is the miracle. And in it, God reveals his greatest secret. He was never still. He's been shaping you all along. Perhaps throughout this journey, you've realized that God's silence was never the end. It was the soil where something new was being planted. The time that seemed lost was, in truth, shaping you for purpose. Waiting was never punishment. It was care. And every prayer that seemed unanswered was heard in a language only heaven understands. Everything that appeared still was movement disguised as calm. God was organizing the invisible, aligning what your eyes couldn't see, preparing your heart to sustain what was coming. What you called delay, heaven called process. What you thought was silence, the Spirit called formation. And now, perhaps, it all begins to make sense. Faith matures when it stops asking for proof and starts resting in presence. It's there, in that quiet space, that the heart discovers the absence of signs is not the absence of God. It's the sign that he's closer than ever. When nothing moves on the outside, it's because something deep is being moved within, and the God who seems silent keeps speaking between the lines of time. Remember this: God's promises do not expire. Time doesn't weaken them, it refines them. What belongs to him endures, and what is yours by purpose no delay can prevent. Grace doesn't work by human clocks, but by the calendar of eternity. And when the appointed time comes, everything fits together with a precision that only love could orchestrate. Maybe the miracle you've been waiting for hasn't happened yet, but another one is happening right now, the miracle of transformation within. The peace that's beginning to bloom in the middle of uncertainty is proof that God is already at work. The fear that faded, the heart that grew calm, the faith that endured even when weary, all of it is movement. And it's within that invisible movement that the promise is fulfilled. God has not forgotten you. He simply placed you in a slower rhythm so your heart can learn to breathe in his tempo. Every season has a purpose, and silence speaks too. It speaks of formation, of love, of patience. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that the silence was the echo of a God working in places you couldn't yet reach. So don't rush the process. Don't give up in the in-between. Keep walking, even if with small steps, because heaven hasn't stopped, it has only changed pace. And in the right time, you'll see that the same God who seemed quiet was building something eternal inside you. If today your heart feels like nothing is moving, remember, stillness is only an illusion. God is moving the unseen, adjusting what's essential, preparing what's inevitable. And when his time is revealed, what once sounded like silence will be remembered as the sweetest sound of faithfulness. Be still then, breathe, wait. Heaven is not distant, it's working in secret, and the same God who began the good work within you is faithful to complete it, until your heart can finally say with peace, even when nothing moves, God moves within me. If you'd like more gentle, hope-filled reflections, subscribe. It helps this small channel reach those who need it.